I am muted. Hello, everybody.
Hi. I thought I was having additional problems on my computer for a minute there.
Nope. I'm going to let people in as they come in. Looks like we have about 6 people right now. Give them a couple minutes. Great. Let me see.
Hey, Katie, do you prefer everybody to not be on video, or?
If people want to be on video, that would be great.
Makes it a little more personal if you're feeling like you're showered and it's a safe zone. If you're not feeling comfortable because you're in sweats, no harm, no foul, but would love to see faces.
Hi, it's Julie here from London. I am definitely in sweats. It's 9 p.m.
Well, Julia, then please be comfortable.
Counting down some dinner and in sweatpants for sure.
Let me see. Just making sure. I think we're having some people who are stuck on the other side, so trying to get them all in.
Apologies to the organizers, as I have to leave a bit early for a coronavirus briefing, so sorry in advance.
That is totally fine.
That is a top priority, so no worries whatsoever. Thanks for joining us from across the pond. I think we're waiting for some of the panelists to get on as well.
Yeah, let's see. Pam, which link worked for you?
When you said search for that,
Okay.
I'll try to send it to you.
Let's see. Okay.
The click here to join link in the meeting invite was the one that worked.
Okay. Just share that with them, so hopefully they'll be on in a second.
Awesome.
Let's see. Sorry about the technical difficulties, everyone. It's
part of the joy of our current situation. So great to see so many people joining, though.
Yes.
Anyone, while we're waiting for other people, anyone want to introduce themselves? I'm Pam Koska. I'm the CEO of All Raise, by the way.
Hi, this is Grace Chen from Houston. I'm with BP.
Welcome, Grace.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Juliana Kotakela, the CEO and founder of Cheeky, smart wearables company.
Welcome,
Welcome.
Cheeky. Welcome, Juliana. Anyone else want to make an intro?
This is Pragati Chopra.
I can. Hi, how are you? How are you? Good, everybody hanging out.
We're trying to just do some introductions while some people are still going on.
You know how to do that?
Hi, Susanna Keith here from Hello Career Guru.
Hello.
Oh, thank you all for turning on your video. We shared earlier, if you're just joining, it's lovely to see people's faces and have that interaction makes it more dynamic for us. However, if you are feeling unshowered and and comfortable in your sweats, this is a judgment-free zone too. So feel free to not turn it on. I'm loving seeing people turn on their video. Thank you.
And I think we finally got all of the panelists in. Thank you again for your patience. Love the intros. If you all want to keep doing the intros through the chat, that would be great. That way we can kind of get a sense of who's on the call, see if there's synergy. I'm sure there is synergy though, since we're all here for this talk. Really excited to get going. Just as a few housekeeping things, I think we're going to have some content, kind of like the panelists chatting over some questions for the first part of this talk. It would be great if everyone is on mute during that time, just so people can listen into what our panelists are sharing. And then we'll open it up for Q&A after that. And then you can, share your questions, unmute yourselves, that sort of thing. You can also drop questions into the chat as well, and I'll be monitoring that. But I'll turn it over to Pam to give the full welcome to us.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm Pam Koska, I'm the CEO of AllRaise. For those of you who are not familiar with AllRaise started as a rallying cry back in the late 2017 timeframe. Fast forward 2 years, we're coming up on our second anniversary later this week, which we're thrilled about. And our mission and our purpose is really to focus on accelerating the success of female founders and funders to build a more prosperous and equitable future. Tech has been severely underrepresented in terms of 52% of the population, and we aim to change the culture of tech so that we all can have an equal seating at the table. So it's thrilling to have you all here, and I'm delighted that we have a bunch of panelists with us. One of the defining factors for AllRaise is the amazing community of largely women, but also some wonderful men who are around the table committed to making this cultural change. And we've been marshaling and activating this community at this point in time. Obviously, it's a very stressful time to see how we can help other founders and funders. And one of the topics that we were all feeling personally, especially was working from home, and then working from home as a mom and what that entailed, and as maybe a caregiver as well to elderly parents. And so lots of stresses at this point in time. We want to marshal some resources and build some community just to have a chance to get together and share tips, tricks, and generally feel support from a community of like-minded folks. So I'm thrilled with the panelists that we have today. I'm going to allow them to make all of their introductions. And maybe we can start with Sarah Lacy, who's the CEO and founder of ChairmanMe. Want to give a brief intro?
Sure. Hi. I'm thrilled to be here. This is my kid's second week of spring break, and I never thought as a working mother that spring break would be easier than school. I'm like having anxiety dreams about going back into homeschooling next week. So if I look relaxed, it's because it's spring break and the world is upside down. I run ChairmanMe, which is a non-judgmental, non-toxic community for working women, whether they're mothers or not. We started as a digital community 3 years ago, fully anticipating this is where we would go and this would be super crucial. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. We have blundered into a horrible epidemic where our business has never been more relevant. And I think one of the things that's helping me get through every day is that I know I'm working on a business that's helping other women get through every day. So thrilled to be here. That's me. I'll mute myself.
Thanks so much. We're excited to have you. Sofya Polyakov, you want to go next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sofya. Thanks so much for having me here, and I hope that everybody is healthy and well and that your families are well. I run a company called the Noun Project. It's a marketplace for iconography. We've been around for about 9 years, have about 6 million users right now. And then there's another company that I started with my co-founder called Lingo, which is a digital asset manager where you can host anything from brand assets to using it for style guides.
Wonderful. And Shilla, I'm sorry if I say your name wrong. Is it Shilla or Shilla?
Shilla.
Shilla.
Yes.
Shilla, welcome. Always a joy to meet new founders, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's do an intro.
Yes. My name is Shilla. I run a company I founded a couple years ago called Thrilling. We partner with vintage stores. Shockingly, there are more vintage boutiques across the US than Starbucks and McDonald's, and they're primarily owned and operated by women who are the sole bread earners for their household. And I really resonate with what Sarah said. I think that's one of the most rewarding aspects of the work, which is partnering with these badass women, and we help them go online, which is extremely crucial right now, their only way of making money. So we are ramping up into high gear. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, 2 little boys who are totally rabid, insane monkeys. And I'm very excited for this conversation.
Well, fabulous. I'm thrilled to be here and moderating. I also have a 10-year-old daughter who is being very kind to me and hopefully squirreled away, but she might come and say hi in the middle of this, which feels like it's the new normal. But this is a great panel of women who are also contributing materially to the advancement of women. So thank you all for what you do professionally and what you do to further the cause for women generally. And with that, let's jump right in to this. One of the questions that I thought we could start off with is, we may have all seen the meme that started probably 2 or 3 weeks ago when shelter in place started, which was like, here's how I'm going to structure the day for my child and myself. And then I believe it was like 5 to 7 days later, the meme came back with just a big scribble line through it. The best of intentions for structuring days. But any of the panelists want to start by talking about how you're structuring days and kind of what are the major changes, especially some of us are at different phases in this shelter in place modality. So might be helpful. And Shilla, because we ended with you, let's start with you and see what you have to share here.
I feel a little bit like, I don't know if anybody else resonates with this, but I felt, for me, in terms of parenthood, the biggest trauma was going from 0 to 1 kid, when like you had control and then a complete total, like you're kind of half drowning, half swimming. Like I viscerally remember those first 6 months and we'll never forget them. That's a little bit of what this has felt like, from going from pre-corona to post-corona. It's been overwhelming, maddening, terrifying, you know, all of those things. We tried structure. My husband works a very intense full-time job as well, and with shifts, and it just didn't work for us. We have simultaneous competing urgent priorities that we both need during the day. One of our kids, our 1-year-old, is on a suicide mission at all times. Our 4-year-old is wants to be constant. I have to beg him to watch TV, which is so crazy. And so the only things that have gotten us through, this is week 3, is triage. And it's moment by moment, hour by hour triage. It's mutual. Who has the most urgent need? One of the kids is on fire. Okay, that's the most urgent need. Between my husband and I, one of us has to get this, you know, document finished, or else this deal's going to go through. Like it's mutual triage. And then the second thing is, I've really learned, especially this lesson, especially through this experience, focus, because I think I pride myself on being a great multitasker, and it's actually just not true. And there are all those studies that prove it. You know, you lose EQ, IQ, creativity, productivity. Just do the dishes and focus on the dishes, and then write that email. Like, you're just going to be really terrible at both and be really frustrated if you try to do it at the same time. And then the last thing that has really, that has helped me a lot is that I lose the guilt. I'm not going to feel guilty about parking my kid in front of a TV. I'm not going to feel guilty about a glass of wine or 10 cookies or whatever it is that we need to get through it. Like, we are already, I know all of us on this call are so hard on ourselves, and this is not the time. Like, we need to be generous and kind, and that's the only way we're going to survive.
That's awesome. And I'm sure some of the people who are later in the day might actually have a little cocktail going as we speak. Sofya, did you want to add to that?
No, I love everything that Shilla said. This has been madness, and I think that giving your employees a break during this time is crucial as leaders, and then extending that same break to yourself, obviously. my husband and I have 2 kids. We have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they're pretty wild. 4-year-old's kind of off the charts. So what we found works best is taking turns. And every night we sit down, we look at our calendars, we see who has which calls that cannot be missed. And we schedule around that. Like literally I put in my calendar, this is my time to work, this is Edward's time to work. And we just have to switch on and off. And then, you know, hopefully catch up on some stuff in the evenings, but it's definitely been very brutal. And then also, I also wanted to reiterate what Shilla pointed out is I think that we're all here overachievers, and we can be very hard on ourselves, and we try to multitask when we don't feel like we're accomplishing enough. And I have not found that to work. When I have little kids, I'm sure it's different when you have older kids, but with little ones, they know when you're not paying attention to them, and they like freak out. Like they will try to kill each other when you're not paying attention to them. So what I found is like, I'm not one of those people who can kind of sorry, there are kids on the call. I'm not one of those people who can kind of work and try and stay focused on putting together an email or on reviewing some numbers at the same time as watching my kids. Like that's not possible. Which is why I think it's so important to take turns with your spouse. And when you're working, like put in your headphones, lock the door, and trust that your spouse is gonna watch the kids. And don't try, like my first instinct is if I hear somebody crying, I wanna run in there and I wanna figure out what's wrong, and I wanna help to triage the situation. And I can't, like I have to focus on work during the time that I'm available and give that responsibility to my husband. And when it's my turn, he does the same thing. Like put in your headphones, don't pay attention to any noise. Like if there's blood, I'm sure that somebody will let you know. But other than that, like you just have to focus on one thing at a time.
And Sarah, how about, I'm sure you have your own color commentary to add and build upon that.
Yeah, this is actually just a cup of whiskey. No, I'm just kidding. I wish it were maybe in an hour. No, it is coffee. Don't worry. I mean, first of all, I love and second and ditto all of those comments, especially being kind to yourself. One silver lining for this, for me, is that like, we've all kind of agreed there's no such thing as a bad mom at this point, to Shilla's point. Like I hate, and I'm sorry if anyone works in this field, I hate video games personally. It is the only thing that I'm kind of like, about as a parent. I mean, the day before we went into lockdown, I bought my kids a Nintendo Switch. It's like, this is an emergency situation, and like, I need to be able to park you somewhere for several hours, or my company goes out of business and we all starve. Is that better than Nintendo? No, then we'll take the Nintendo. So I do think that's one thing that I hope, I've been trying to think a lot about, what do I hope stays with us after that crisis? And I think this non-judgmental, your kids will be fine thing, I hope that's one of the things that stays with us. But to answer the question about structure, so first of all, my kids are older. My daughter turns 7 on Sunday, which is super fun to have your birthday in isolation. You can't see any of your friends. My eldest, who's gender fluid, so he's sort of between boy and a girl, he is 9. Or he's about to turn 9 in a couple months. So they're older, and it's funny, at their school, they go to a K-8 school, and all of the older kids are feeling sorry for us as the lower school parents, because our kids cannot do Google Classroom. We have to basically teach them. I have to basically run first grade and second grade for at least 4 or 5 hours of every day that I'm schooling them. And so everyone's been feeling sorry for me, but listening to you guys, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have it so much better. I mean, my kids can entertain themselves. They can be quiet in a room for several hours. They're also old enough that they get the realities that I have to work for us to have food. Like I'm a divorced mom, so I pay the bills in the house. And fortunately, my eldest, Eli, is basically a tiny Instagram influencer. He is really bougie, and he's kind of like a tiny Jonathan Van Ness from Queer Eye. And like, he just has really expensive tastes. So I'm like, would you like to go to Disneyland for your birthday? Well, then I need to keep working. Do you like this house? Would you like a smaller house? And he's like, he gets it. And he's like, go work, go do it. So I think when they're older, they understand a little better. And you can say things to them like, hey, I know you're frustrated that I'm on my device right now. I would much rather be playing with you. This is what I have to do. And this is a part of me you never see because you're at school when I do this. And I make sure I contain it all in my work day. And, you know, this is my work day. You're in the middle of my work day. So, you know, I think that it is, again, for a positive spin, and I'm wary of too many positive spins because I think there is so much real pain right now, and I think that can come across as very insensitive. But I do think there's a positive spin of your children seeing you as a professional capacity. I think especially as mothers who try to be everything for our children, you know, we leave that part of ourselves at the door. And like my kids, it's funny, if I interact with someone who's read one of my books or knows me in the world, my kids will start referring to me as Sarah Lacy. Like they know there's a difference of Sarah Lacy, the brand, and mom. And I think they're really proud of that. They know Sarah Lacy pays the bills and mom takes care of them. And, you know, my parents are both teachers. I got to have both of them as teachers, and the ability to like see them doing what they do best in the world that has nothing to do with me, like really deepened our relationship. So I think that's a real opportunity to kind of include kids as much as we can in what we do without, you know, wanting to kill everyone in the house. But I think, you know, in terms of structure, one thing that is generally horrible but great is I'm divorced. So normally 50-50 custody has been like the biggest tragedy of my adult life because I did not have children to raise them 50% of the time. I find it incredibly hard to not see them every day. This is different because we're basically alternating days. So we're alternating 24-hour periods. So I have them for a full 24-hour period where I do school, I do work, I take care of them, I do bath. I basically get this overdose of my children that I never get in normal life. And then they go to their dad's house for 24 hours and I can catch up on everything. So I go in this cycle of basically, I'm lucky if I get 4 hours of work on a homeschool day, realistically. Like, yeah, I could get up at 6. I usually get up at 6. I do a couple hours and I could stay up till 2. But I did that when I was a single mom running Pando, and I got hospitalized with pneumonia in 3/4 of my lungs. You cannot sleep 3 hours a night and be functional and be there for your company and be there for your children. So I'm lucky if I do a good 4 hours of work on homeschool days, but then I'll do 8 to 10 the next day. So I kind of have these two modes I can shift into, which has been really helpful. I've been really lucky that I have a co-parent who has stepped up and is doing that. I've been writing about this a lot and talking to a lot of people about the importance of women, you know, getting their partners to step up if they have a partner, because I think we fall, because of all the biases that are already stacked against us. Yeah, a lot of us make less money than our partners because women make less money. Maybe we don't have as important jobs because women don't get promoted at the same rate. But if you allow your career to be sidelined because your job is less intense or less important, you're basically saddling yourself with a second maternity leave that none of us signed up for, none of us prepared for. And you're gonna face like once we even get out of this crisis, there's gonna be the prove it again thing. There's gonna be all of that stuff that we already fought through once. And it's just not fair. And also fatherhood bonus, motherhood penalty. They will get rewarded and look like a good dad for stepping up and teaching school, whereas we will look like unreliable mothers. So I have been telling, like, I think the positive reinforcement way to talk about this is your kids are watching you, and this is such a crazy time. Our kids are gonna remember who was there, who stepped in, who taught them math, who held them when they were crying, they couldn't see their friends. It is a huge opportunity. And yeah, it is gonna be a time suck for probably a year. Like this thing is not gonna end, but that is an investment you're making in that closeness and intimacy and trust with your child that they'll remember the rest of your life. And I think both parents should want to take that on equally, as horrible and draining and emotional as it can be.
Thank you. There's so much in that conversation that we're going to like have some follow-on threads, Sarah. So thanks for pulling all those out. One of the ones that I wanted to address was this issue of self-care and avoiding burnout, because now we have, you know, we always had the job of mom, and we also had the job of working professional and whatever other jobs. But now we also have this one called teacher. And depending on the age range, as you say, like the younger the children, the harder that responsibility is. And we generally have a rule in our family that like teaching is obviously part of being a parent, but sometimes there's things that you intentionally need to have a third party do because your kid feels more comfortable melting and letting it all hang out with you. And so is there any, like, can we talk a little bit more about how do we avoid that burnout that ultimately does lead to a lot of physical stress? I mean, this is already a very stressful, challenging time. Are there any tips that the panelists have for how to avoid that burnout? And a lot of it sounds like it starts with forgiveness, and every day just acknowledging that this is no longer an 8-hour working day. This is something south of an 8-hour working day. So comments there, and let's start in the middle. Sofya, you want to jump on that?
Yeah, I mean, the blessing of having a 4-year-old in preschool is, I'm sorry, but I get to say fuck it right now. Oh God, I keep forgetting there might be kids on the phone. Yeah. All right, that was my headphone. Can you guys hear me okay? So yeah, so our kid is in a private school that goes preschool through 8th grade, and it's fantastic, and the teachers have been very proactive about sending out assignments of everything that they have to do and learn in a day, and I've just been ignoring it because I'm sorry, like Sarah said, it's either my business goes out or my kid gets to learn how to cut out shapes. Which one's a priority? Like, he's not going to go to college without knowing how to cut out shapes and color between the lines. So in terms of preschool, like, I'm doing my best, and if we have the time for it, then he's going to get to watch the video of his teacher and to do a reading assignment or do whatever. But honestly, it's not a priority right now. I think it's going to be more of a priority for older kids. Something that I've found helpful and also has been good for my soul is I found a website called abcmouse.com, which is basically like gaming with an educational twist. So my son is getting to learn counting and his ABCs and whatever not while he's playing on my extra laptop, and I get to use my work laptop and sit next to him and hope that he doesn't interrupt me too many times with how to twist the gerbil wheel or whatever other questions come up right now. But I think in terms of actual education, it's harder for people with older kids right now.
I agree with Sofya that it's easier, probably it's easier for us to ignore. I'm the same way. My 4-year-old also gets a curriculum from the school, which I completely ignore. I just have I have a couple like overall objectives for the day. I'd love for them to go outside and to be able to get some fresh air once or twice a day, and I'd like to be able to do something kind of you know, academic related once during the day. When that is, how much time it is, like I just at this point have decided not to put that pressure on myself as my own self-care. The other thing for me is I think it's just really being honest with yourself about what it is that you need. So I'm an introvert, and so parenthood and, you know, starting a company, like those are all things that are challenging anyway. And now for me, I regain my energy and strength by being alone, and obviously that's gone out the window. I'm basically like, you know, like hiding in the shower just for a few moments. But I think, you know, if you're really honest with yourself about like what is it that you actually need, you know, I need an hour or two of just kind of silence, like not engaging and not so my husband is wonderful, and he will, you know, he knows when I get that look in my eye and I'm like, I need a break. You know, he'll take it on and take the kids out of the house and just give me an hour or so just to reset. And that's just something that for me and it's different for everybody. What is it that you actually really need so that you don't have a complete nervous breakdown? Lastly, and this has been a huge game changer this week, and it's probably a little bit controversial, but I'm sure everyone is grappling with this. We have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, so we've had a nanny, and we decided to bring her back this week, working part-time hours, and we struggled with that a lot given what's going on right now. But it was just like our intention was to just keep paying her and have her stay at home, but we just realized just being completely honest, it wasn't going to work. Like we were not going to survive. You guys were going to see me on the local news in some horrendous tragedy. Like it just wasn't going to work. And we really trust her. She trusts us, and we're being as careful as we can in this environment to make sure that we're all healthy and safe. But for that's been a game changer.
Well, I'll just chime in. First of all, like I have had the woman who cleans our house still coming. So similar, I just like on top of schooling, on top of everything else, 2 children, like that's just not going to happen. And again, I kind of gave her the choice of like, I would pay her and she could come or not, but I kind of think she wants the sanity and normalcy of work. That was my similar thing. And I think it's like, you ultimately, if we all lived in places where we were closer to family, like how families used to happen, we would probably still be seeing our extended family. And those of us who are working mothers who rely on nannies or house cleaners or whoever it is to like make your life sane and help you do it, that's your extended family. And like, I think you have to trust your gut and go with what's right for everyone in the house, not just your children. So I totally applaud you doing that. I think for me, what I need is I need to be able to exercise every day. I need to be able to go on a run, or if I've like run 30 miles this week already and my knees are about to fall off, I need to go on like a long walk or a hike. I need to be outside and I need to be alone, and I need an hour, or, maybe on a day I don't have my kids, 2 hours to just be on a run and be by myself and listen to an audiobook and just listen to someone read to me. And if I can do that, then I generally can cope with everything else. But if I can't do that, like, I really lose it. Like that's kind of my grounding time. And that's really the only thing that I like need. And I feel so grateful that, I live somewhere like California where the weather's been good, where we do have like space. In San Francisco, I know people have had different experiences, but my experience in San Francisco, I run about between 6 to 10 miles, which, it's a 7 mile by 7 mile city. So I cover a lot of the city. People are very respectful. People are keeping distance. I don't have, I feel like there's some days I'll go on a run and I'll see 20 people. So I feel like I can have that space and not feel like I'm putting my family at risk. I think that's a lot harder in denser cities or cities where people aren't taking this seriously. So I do think it's a luxury to even have the ability to get out and run. But that's kind of my big self-care thing. And, beyond that, I think we all just need to like be honest with what we need at any point in time. And the same way you allow yourself, hopefully, to feel all of the feelings that come up in this, allow your kids to feel all the feelings. Like my eldest, Eli, has been having a really hard time. He's been seeing a therapist for 2 years. He's gender fluid. He has anxiety. He has a lot of big emotions. And those things haven't stopped because the world has gone into this period, but he can't see his therapist because it doesn't work with a Skype call when you're doing play-based therapy. And, yesterday he was having a super emotional day, and my current partner was like, what is Eli's deal? Like, we all have to live in his drama. He's blah, blah, blah. And it's like, this is a kid with anxiety. This is a kid who already does not feel like he was born into the right body. This is a kid who has control issues. And like, look at what the world is right now. And look at like the stress that we're bringing into this. He can't see his friends. He can't have routine. He can't, and sometimes your kids are going to be just total jerks do in things that in normal times you would send them to their room. Like, that's unacceptable that you just talk to me that way. That is unacceptable that you talk to your sister that way. Instead, it's like, you know, as a mother when they're doing that because they can't cope right now. The same way, it's not characteristic for me to snap at my children, but there's times I do it. And so I've just been like enveloping them in a huge hug. And we just sit and like feel those feelings for a while, because they're all going through the same shit we are, even though they're not reading the news. And I just think giving people that space and freedom and knowing, I don't know what it is for you guys. For me, every fourth day I hit a wall. I'm on this 4-day cycle and I feel really good. I feel really in control. And then I still feel like, well, I've kind of got this. And then I have a day that's very up and down. And then I have a horrible day where I want to leave my partner. I want to like crawl in a hole and never get out. And I want to drink all of the alcohol in the house. I mean, it's just like, I have that fourth day where I hit a wall. And it's not just the stress of work and family. This is the level of human tragedy. Like, that's almost 1,000 people died in a day in Spain. 1,000 people. Not only the loss of life and the loss of, you know, something like 40% of people in New York aren't going to be able to pay their rent. Like, not just the loss of life and loss of livelihood that might be inevitable with a global pandemic, but the elements of this that were totally fixable and did not have to happen. Like, I was reading something today, the Prime Minister of Denmark, who's a woman, and Denmark closed its borders, closed everything down, like way before mid-March, way earlier than everyone else. They have had a tiny number of cases, a tiny number of deaths, and they've guaranteed every worker 90% of their salary, so their economy isn't falling off a cliff. Like, there are countries that saw this coming. There are leaders who saw this coming. There are leaders who are making sure that 40% of tenants aren't going to potentially be evicted. Like, just to me, the level of human tragedy and suffering, I think that's part of what every 4 days cripples me, just cripples me. And I think that's the other thing we don't talk about with having kids in this crisis, because how do you explain this to your kids? Like, as much as I just said, I let them be total jerks and get away with things that they don't normally, I have one rule, and I could bring Eli in right now and he could tell you what it is. I don't let them say the words "not fair," period. Because none of us on this call can say anything is not fair right now with what's going on in the rest of the world. So I don't know that any of that was a clean answer, but it's just knowing your cycle. And it's like the same as your monthly cycle as a woman. It's like every fourth day, I'm going to have a meltdown, and I need to give myself the space to have that meltdown. And my family needs to understand that's going to happen.
I appreciate the vulnerability of everybody sharing their stories. Those are some incredible stories. I have one other question, and then Katie, I think we're going to toss it back over to the participants to see if they have questions. But almost on day one, people started to call me and say, and be very vulnerable with me, and say, I'm having this this concern, this extra burden on me, which is that as they were coming home, a lot of their male colleagues were coming home and like expecting either them to pick up the slack, or they had a stay-at-home spouse or a live-in nanny, someone else who could pick up the slack of the fact that like their children are home, they need care. And so they felt like, oh, I know that they'll be sensitive for a while, that they'll be understanding for a while, but then that's going to change. And so this just concern for their job, for their livelihood, for how they will be perceived. I think, Sarah, it was you who said something about this being an extra tax, you know, the second maternity leave, mat leave. And so I'd like to revisit that and just see if there's any advice that you have to how to deal with a colleague. And this could be a colleague who just doesn't have children either. They might be single. There's lots of different expectations, but how to best work with your colleagues or give feedback to your colleagues to help them understand, because we're all here, we're living this on a daily basis. Like, I see people nodding and laughing because we're resonating with one another. Those are some flavor of the experience that you're sharing is being felt and experienced in all of the households. But I'm wondering if there's any tips or tricks that you have, or thoughts that you have, or even cultural norms that you've proactively established, gotten ahead of this concept within your companies as CEOs that other people can learn from, adopt, adjust. Would love to hear what sharing thoughts you have on that. And Sarah, why don't we start with you on that one?
Sure. So one thing that I always think helps with these conversations is having some data, because I think people just want to think we're complaining and just want to ignore it and say these things aren't really happening. And I think what we've learned from the last 5 years, that we've had so much data on why there should be more inclusion, on how good women are, you know, certain things, all that. We know data alone doesn't do it, because we'd have a 50-50 world now. But where I've found data is appropriate is you can really challenge people. And if there are facts, then they have to confront the more uncomfortable aspects of things like unconscious bias. So a woman who's a consultant in the Chairman Mom community actually just did a study. She surveyed a couple hundred women with corporate jobs of like a senior level at a companies with 50 people or more, who had at least one kid under the age of 18 living with them. And we're gonna publish some of this data later this week. So, I mean, if anyone, we have a free newsletter, Chairman Mom, if you want more detail, I'll point to all of it in there. But the top line, I mean, it basically puts into stark numbers what we all knew was going to happen. So of these women, 8% say their partner is basically picking up the slack, or they have someone else who's helping them school and co-parent their children during this time. Like the degree to which it has fallen solely on women's shoulders, and we see the same pattern that already happens when it comes to division and share of domestic duties, is astounding. And I think it's important to like know two things. First off, data shows us that that doesn't change generationally. So there was a study that came out maybe last month or so that showed that millennial men are like totally cool with their wives working because they want a second paycheck, but they aren't going to do any more housework as a result. So like, even as some of these generational norms are changing, the domestic duties that tend to fall to women really aren't. And there's also a study that I wrote about in my book that I published a couple years ago about motherhood, that shows that the more a woman out earns her spouse, she takes on even more housework on average to compensate for the fragile male ego that she is running, that she's bringing in the most money. So, you know, I think just looking at and owning and acknowledging the facts of what's happening helps you get out of this not all men defensiveness that can come up when you try to have this conversation at work. So I think that's one tool that can be really effective and cannot make the conversation about you or about them or about any one person. This is society. We all live in a patriarchy. And frankly, women are so conditioned to do these things. Sometimes we don't even ask or demand that a partner do it. Like, you can acknowledge this is a system we're all in, and that feels a lot less finger pointy. I think the other thing is, you know, you need to always just find allies in these situations. And what I think doesn't work, the American workplace has done a really good job of dividing women who are mothers against women who aren't mothers. And we see this over and over again. Like, everyone knows a story, or maybe you experienced this, of someone in a workplace who was like, you know, someone is whispering in some woman's ear who doesn't have kids, well, doesn't it bother you that she gets to leave early or she gets to take vacation? There's all these ways women who are mothers are pitted against women who are non-mothers. And I think we just have to be conscious of that and consciously reject it all of the time. So, you know, the women on my team who aren't mothers, I'm not treating them any differently than the women who are mothers. I think, you know, and Sofya said this a little bit earlier, I think everyone needs space. And it's not up to me to know if that space is like you taking care of a sick loved one, you being maybe an at-risk person or having your own health issue, or, you know, you needing to take care of your kids. I think not turning this into a competition of who has it worse in the workplace is really, really important, because that's how division happens. And look, as working mothers, like, we may all have a really good argument of why we have it worse than other people, but resisting the desire to go there just stops that sort of pitting against each other from happening. You know, and then I think also it's, you know, shouting out people who are doing the right thing. Like, I think if, you know, I try to consistently, when people ask me about this, give credit to my kid's dad, who like has not always been the best co-parent in the world, but is tremendously stepped up right now and is being amazing. I think if there's men in your company who are taking time off, who are doing that homeschooling, acknowledge them, you know, point out that that's leadership too, because, you know, if I'm not the world's biggest fan of Mark Zuckerberg, but I think one of the best things that he did for parents, both mothers and fathers, was taking paternity leave. Because I hear so much men say, well, I just can't do that because my job's too important. And if Mark Zuckerberg's job 2 years post IPO was not too important to take paternity leave, your job is not too important to take time for your kids in a time of emergency. So, have data so it's not personal. Don't play any role, fight the temptation to play any role in must be nice to be you, because stress to you is, did you get a workout in today? Not did you teach first and second grade? And, celebrate the people who are doing it right and give accolades to the people who are going the extra mile. And, that could be a parent, that could be a worker who doesn't have kids, who is, we just released the Chairman Mom app yesterday, and I'm giving all kinds of credit to the people on my team who don't have kids, who've been continuing to work, 18, 20-hour days, because they acknowledge they're the ones who don't have kids. So, I think you just got to be all in this together. We got to be all in this together as families, all in this together as a human race, and certainly all in this together as companies, and not, fight. In times of uncertainty, we want to say we're doing something better than someone else, or we're doing something harder than someone else. But it's like just constantly fighting that urge and knowing that we all have our part to play in this, and everyone's life sucks right now.
Thank you. Sofya, I was wondering if you could comment. You were very thoughtful. If you have, for those on the session, if you have not checked out, Sofya has an amazing post on Medium, also accessible via the Noun Project homepage, about working from home. And I'm not sure if this is something you, and how you've been reevaluating that for all of your employees. And so I'm wondering if this topic has come up, and if you have anything under that thoughtful umbrella of working from home and what it means to be working from home in this moment in history.
Yeah, I think for me, this comes to culture and the precedent that I've set both at home and at the office. I think that as somebody in a leadership positions, we have a responsibility to not just talk the talk, but also walk the walk. And the way I've done it is my co-founder is my husband. We're working co-founder or married co-founders. And we've always tried to lead through example. So I fully expect him to do his part around the house. Like that, there's just no ifs or buts about it. It can either be a free will or or else. And most of the time, luckily, he does pitch in out of free will. But I think it's really important to set that example. I'm a mom of 2 little boys. And I'm trying to teach my kids how to do laundry at this time and how to clean, and definitely trying to make sure that on the home front they know that mommy has a job, mommy's going to help pay the bills just like daddy, and that daddy is going to make dinner every night. That's just how our household is divided in terms of responsibilities. And then in terms of work and running the company, my philosophy on running a company is that I always put my employees first. I don't put customers first, because the way I see it is, if I take care of my employees, and if they know that I have their back, then they're going to take care of my customers, and that they're going to do the best job that they can, because they know that they're taken care of. And the way that has translated into what we're talking about is, I expect everybody to take both maternity and paternity leave. And I have not had a single male employee who's become a father not take their full paternity leave. That's just the expectation. In terms of what's going on right now, before about 4 weeks ago now, I reached out to all the parents on my team. We have a Slack channel called Baby Wranglers, where we share advice and pictures, and anybody can join in and read all of our advice and see all the baby pics. But obviously we try and kind of segment that so that we're not bombarding the rest of the team with them. Anyway, I put in there about 4 weeks ago, that I'm expecting schools and daycares to close and that parents should be prepared for that. And then I also let them know that the company is going to stand behind them. We're going to do everything possible to support them through this time, and that we'll make it work. Like, I think that's the best that you can do as a leader right now, is to let your employees know that you've got their back, that you understand what they're going through, that you don't expect the impossible from them. And as a parent, I think that we have such an exposure to this ourselves that we're able to have that empathy for what others are going through, and we're able to share that empathy with them and to set a good example for the rest of the team. And this isn't, to Sarah's point, it's not about saying, well, hey, you're a parent, so you get to not work during these hours, and you're not a parent, so therefore, you know, double down. That's not what it's about. It's about taking into account what people are going through, both in terms of physically, in terms of mental health, and trying to support them along that journey. And because of the culture that we have on the team, where it's not, you know, we don't have a bunch of, we don't have competition, we don't have drama, we just have a lot of very like community-based, or people who put their community first and their team first and their families first. So there hasn't been a problem in terms of parents taking that time that they need to take care of their kids. I think that everybody's been very supportive and very understanding. One thing that when we decided to roll out working from home in advance of COVID, we did it about a month in advance of COVID. One of the policies that I set company-wide is that you should be available for anyone to ask a question between 10 to 4. But if you need to step away, whether it's like to go to the grocery store or to get a workout in or go to the doctor, just give people a heads up so that they know to ask you a question either beforehand or they know when to expect an answer. And so the way that that's translated into what's going on right now is when somebody's going on baby duty, we put in Slack, like, I'm going on baby duty for the next 2 hours, 4 hours, we'll be back at this time. And people know that, people are supportive of that. So I think it's worked out pretty well.
Thank you. Treasure trove of tips in there. And Shilla, do you have anything else to add to this kind of vulnerable conversation around working from home and the extra tax on women?
Yes. I think Sarah and Sophia's thoughts and guidance are spot on. I don't have much to add. I just, I do think about, I think it sounds like most of us, I think on this call, are in the fortunate position of being able to lead or in leadership positions of organizations, and that we get to set the culture and the standards. And, it's like with our kids, my kids are monkey see, monkey do. Like, they see me do something, then they, like, if my kids all of a sudden learns how to be sarcastic, and I'm like, like, where did he learn that from? Obviously they mimic behavior that they see. And so, we have the opportunity, because we have the privilege of being in leadership positions, to kind of set the standard for everyone else. I think just a couple small things that I'll add is, I think a lot about, as we look to work from home and be remote for a really long period of time, how do you encourage the kind of intangible, interconnective glue and social bonding and the informal relationship building? And so, we're encouraging our employees to have those virtual happy hours, or be silly with each other and have like virtual who has the best meme on Fridays contests, and just encouraging ways for people to be able to still connect in informal and in casual ways. And then just also reiterating what Sarah and Sofya said, which is also acknowledging that we're not just working from home, we are at home working during a crisis. And so I think this is also an opportunity to not just lead, but to serve. I've foregone my salary in order to be able to continue paying our employees, some of our hourly employees. We're taking 0% commission from stores for the next 2 months. We're hosting a fundraiser for them. I think this is a time where we really all have the opportunity to, as Sarah mentioned, acknowledge the humanity of we're all in this together and how can we serve.
Thank you all for being so authentic. And I think the cultural flag bearer, torch bearer, and the way that we can reset that in our own companies and serve as an example to other companies as well is super important in this time. Katie, I want to hand it back over to you if there's time for Q&A here, and let you take over.
Definitely. So I don't see any questions in the chat, but I think we have time for like 1 or 2 questions. So if anybody has anything, you can unmute and go ahead and ask your question.
By the way, I'm enjoying seeing some of the younger faces join our call today.
Anything?
Just to kill time while someone gets the courage to ask a question. Pam, how do your nails look like you've gone to a manicurist?
That is one of the things that I have done with my kid. She's 10 years old, so we do mani-pedi time, and that's what we did this weekend. Was we were doing,
because when I do mani-pedi time with my kids, it doesn't look like that.
We did mani-pedi time together, so it's unusual. Usually they don't, like, if you'd seen me last week, they would have been chipped and everything. So you're catching me on a good day. But yeah, mani-pedi time is one of the. I think there was a meme that was, or something I saw go along that was like, oh, I loved that. Certain cities had to be told that, you know, hairstylists and mani and pedi shops were not an essential service because so many of us know how essential they are. And we're all, you know, probably another week away from seeing each other's true hair color here. So, so yeah, whatever you have to do. I heard Madison Reed is going through the roof now because we're all online ordering our natural hair care color. So there are light points.
I see a question in here from Susanna. She's asking how we can support the All Raise community right now. And she also mentioned an anecdote where she was on a call with a whole bunch of male VCs, and they were suggesting that their portfolio companies lay off employees and stop vendors and conserve cash, which is like, that seems like the wrong approach right now. But how can we support the All Raise community? Obviously with female founders, we really want to continue the positive direction of where women are getting money from and leading their own companies. But any suggestions for how we can support other female founders or women in venture?
Our approach has been to mobilize the community here, much as we're doing today. So there are still many people who don't know, and many women who don't know who All Raise is. So continuing to amplify, share that these resources, we're marshaling as many resources as we can. Some of them are more cultural, like we're talking about today. Some of them are more tactical. We're always looking for input on what other services we can do to better serve. So one of the things right now is to, you know, go to our website, look at the different places you can plug in. If you are a female founder, we're always looking for new, what we call founder champions, women who are willing to have a conversation and mentor other women. So plug in and volunteer your services there. Look at our events page, see what's coming up. If you see a topic that is relevant and germane and you have something to contribute to it, please let us know. Katie is doing a lot of our digital programming here, so there's that way. And then again, I think this is as much about a cultural movement as anything. So make sure that you're just being loud and proud. We want to celebrate everyone on this call as an architect of the future. We want this to be the new norm. This should be what it all looks like moving forward. So those are all different ways that you can plug in and support us, and we appreciate from the small, it may seem small, but if we're consistently pushing and promoting, then those are big changes when we see how many people we can get doing it. So appreciate the support and deeply felt appreciate the question coming through.
Just to chime in on that, as someone who was a journalist for 20 years, I'm always trying to think about what are the surprising or not surprising or sort of hidden storylines that are always happening in these times. And I've been having my own debate with myself about whether or not this is a time that plays to female founders' strengths or disproportionately hits female founders. And I think the answer is obviously different for everybody, but I think there's sort of two interesting competing things. And I think it'll be interesting to see how we come out of this. For one thing, most female founders, look at the numbers. We were never part of the blitzscaling movement. The idea that we could just say, oh, okay, we're going to blitz scale. Okay, give me $100 million and I'll go do that. Like, it just wasn't something that most women and people of color and disadvantaged founders ever got to participate in. So this idea that we now have to adjust to a new reality, I feel like the new reality everyone's adjusting to is the reality that underrepresented founders have been playing in during this amazing expansion cycle of the economy that's longer than anyone that has ever seen. So on one hand, I don't think we have the fat to cut that a lot of other businesses do. I don't think we ever got used to a certain way. So, you know, maybe female founders are scrappier because they've always had to do more with less. I think that's the optimistic way to look at it. Certainly that's the case with Chairman Mom. We have an incredibly low burn rate. We have more than a year of capital in the bank because we never thought we could rely on, you know, just going out and sending around a pitch deck and getting a bunch of money. I think though, on the flip side, I know so many female founders who are building phenomenal businesses that because they never had that playbook already were, you know, on 6 months of runway or 3 months of runway, or had cut their own salary, or everyone had cut salary, and they have product market fit, but they aren't getting that next round of capital, that seed extension, you know, what we used to consider an A that's so not an A anymore. And they weren't able to get that next thing. And so they've been kind of making what they have last longer in order to hit those metrics. And then they can finally unlock that next round of capital because the expectations are so much bigger for us to unlock all of those next rounds of capital. And I feel like we're just going to see a lot of carnage of what would have been really good businesses, more so than we were before. There's so many female founded companies that reach product market fit that never get the growth capital. And, you know, and there's things that compound. As a woman, maybe you probably haven't, if you're reflective of the statistics, you haven't made the money that a man in your position would have by this point in your career. So you can't have no salary for 2 years the way a male might be able to. I mean, there's so many compounding things. And, you know, I hope that like the more optimistic scenario takes place. I'm scared that, you know, that old adage of like, when, you know, the market leader has a flu, everyone else has pneumonia. I worry that white male founders are going to have the flu and we're all going to have pneumonia. Both not only women, people of color, you know, disabled, queer, anyone who is not the norm of what gets funded in this country. So I think, you know, unfortunately, it's like overturning the patriarchy. There's not one big thing any of us can do. There's a lot of little things we can do. And I think now is not the time to cut your Rent the Runway subscription. Now is not the time to cut your Stitch Fix subscription. You know, what you need to support female founded businesses, because this is the time when everyone's going to start triaging portfolios. And we know the unconscious bias that's going to come out of that. We know the unconscious bias that's going to come out of that. So all of us supporting as many female founders as possible, we have the numbers. That will make a difference. You know, reaching out to people, being honest, being vulnerable. You know, Chairman Mom hosted a virtual Zoom dinner with founders of, you know, IRL businesses, whether they were fitness instructors or women running co-working spaces, that were all trading tips. I mean, people who were competitors in any other time offering to share each other's balance sheets and figure out what's working and what isn't working. Like, we need to not be zero sum. We need to, you know, not think of it as us versus them. Like, the world was already stacked against us. And if we don't band together and every day do something little to help each other out, like, we're going to be set back. Like, that 2% is going to become 1%.
What a strong and positive note. I'm looking in the chat window. I don't know that, Sarah, you have a chance, but you should look at the chat window before you sign off, just to see a lot of accolades going out for you. And I think that is the power of community. Women represent, you know, so much purchasing power, and we have the ability of choice and where we're going to spend our dollars. And so that community pulling together is so important, and a wonderful positive note. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, because time is what we have the least amount of right now. So I think we're at our limit. But thank you to our panelists, Shilla, Sarah and Sofya for coming together and helping us out here. And for all of you participants who joined us, I hope that this was a moment, a break, a moment of sanity, one of those special gifts to yourself that you did give today, because we appreciated having you all here as well. So thank you for making the time, and we'll continue to look through. We didn't get to all the questions, but insofar as we can get the panelists to give a response, we'll share that with you as well. So thanks to everybody for joining us, and hope that you continue to prosper and have health and wellness moving forward in these troubling times.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.